Hi, hello. My name is Joey Sula. I'm a field sales engineer. Been with Axis for about a year and a half. So my role as a field sales engineer covering Illinois is I help support our sales team on more technical designs and technical demos and things of that nature. So I support Steve and the other salespeople here in the Illinois region with Axis. So today I'm here to do a product update. Now I do have about 45 minutes, and giving a 45 minutes about the technology Axis offers and an overview of Axis is pretty much impossible. So my goal today is to pique your guys' interest about something I talk about today so that you want to follow up with Steve and Pentegra about, hey, let's hear more about cybersecurity or these certain analytics, and then we can dive deeper into that. So our first slide here, our head slide is innovating for a smarter, safer world. That is the Axis mission statement. And I think there is a lot packed into that small mission statement that deserves to go into a little more detail. So innovation, Axis, if you guys, the people who are here, when you walked in, saw the timeline up front that shows all of the Axis first, the first IP camera to the market, the first encoder to the market, IP thermal camera, very long list of achievements. Axis always likes to be innovating, finding what issues there are, what issues are there in the real world that need a solution, and what might not exist yet that we can make to accomplish those needs. So innovation is a very important part of the culture here with Axis. In terms of a smarter, safer world, smarter, every day we're seeing more and more technology in the market, more analytics, which I'll talk about in this presentation, more cybersecurity, as cybersecurity is becoming a bigger issue and more hot topic every day, and safer world. Now this last part, the safer world, is changing a lot right now. If we had said our mission statement a year ago, when you heard safer world, you would be thinking about bites or thefts or stolen equipment, things of that nature. Today, when we see safer, we also are in the middle of a pandemic. So we're seeing how can buildings reopen safely? What can the video surveillance side of things do to make it a safer environment on that front? I can tell you right now, and we can get into this more as well, is we're seeing an increase in both hardware and software solutions with this pandemic.
Hey
We
Joey,
have,
Joey, real quick. You just
yeah.
move. I can't see you behind the virtual slides.
Oh,
Just
okay.
move your body. Yes, perfect. Now I can see you.
And if
Perfect.
you're
Thank
wondering
you.
about the voice of God here, that's Philip. He's another field sales engineer who's in the back room watching the presentation to make sure we don't have issues like my head being chopped off from not looking at the screen. So in terms of the safer world in regards to the pandemic, we're seeing software and hardware type of solutions becoming more and more prevalent. We have cameras like our multi-sensor cameras. We'll show a couple options where we're finding factory floors and stores want full coverage of their building with no blind spots. So if someone does test positive for COVID-19 in a facility, it's going to be easier to do contact tracing if you can follow that person through a facility and see where they were and who they came into contact with. From a software solution, we're seeing different things as well. We have an occupancy estimator we can talk about where you can set a threshold for occupancy of a building. And when it hits that threshold, an alarm triggers or a red light comes on or a monitor says at capacity, please wait. Different solutions like that in this changing world that make environments safer. Hopefully I have better luck with no, I'll be all right. All right, so just I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but this is just a brief snapshot of Axis as a company. So 3,700 employees, 50 countries, 15 years of steady growth. And if you guys don't know, we are part of the Canon group. So Canon purchased Axis about 4 years ago, I would say now, 3 to 4 years ago in that time frame. And then we've also acquired a couple of companies like 2N for door station and intercoms, and CityLog, which is an analytics company that really focuses on traffic control. Yeah. All right, just a quick overview slide of our locations. We are a worldwide company, not just a couple presences, but we do have a global presence. And one thing that Axis is very proud of is being open, being a very standards-oriented company. So when Axis came out with the first IP camera in 1996, what they didn't have was a software solution to view that video. So they worked with a couple early companies like Genetech and Milestone, who are on this list, that companies that could develop software so we could see that video that we were providing on our IP cameras. And we had to be a very open platform company to be able to do this. Now, this is just a small snapshot of the companies we work with. We have some different level of partners. People or companies on this page are likely to get our product before it even comes out. So working very closely with these companies. So when we launch a product, they're ready to go, ready to be installed and in use with these different manufacturers. And the list does just go on in different levels of partners, just examples of all the different manufacturers that we work with in the space. We understand that for big enterprise networks, medium-sized networks, needs are going to be more complex than, hey, I need a couple of cameras with a video surveillance background. We understand you're going to need to work with a lot of manufacturers to meet all of the different needs you have, especially in that large enterprise space. So, talking about different size installations here, we can kind of split this up into small, medium, and enterprise size security installations. So if we're talking today, we're mostly in the enterprise level size space we're looking at. So when you're talking an enterprise solution, you're talking cameras, you're talking access control, intrusion, you're talking having people monitoring video 24/7. All these different systems have to combine into one. So that page earlier showing all the different partners, that's where we really work well, is in these medium and large space opportunities. Now, that being said, there's a lot of customers out there who have small business needs. They need 10 cameras and a recorder, and maybe they can do, okay, I want to just talk to one manufacturer. There might be ways we can help them as well. Okay. All right. So first, we'll talk about our VMS, a little update on our VMS, Axis Camera Station. Axis Camera Station is actually the VMS that's running on all of the monitors around us in this room, in our solutions lab. So we have about 180 devices running on our camera station network, and we have 3 servers running all those cameras, and then behind all these monitors, we have client stations. So kind of, if you're wondering about the layout here, how we're doing this, it's actually is using our Axis solution of cameras with our VMS on there. And so if you're looking for a small, medium opportunity, looking at Axis, we do have audio solutions that tie into that. I saw earlier when people were walking around this room, we play that glass break sensor, and the audio speaker plays an alert. That's audio, that's a Axis speaker going into camera station, and Steve might be pushing that right now here.
Please leave the area. This area is under video surveillance and you have been recorded.
Right. So just an example of an analytic that's triggering a speaker, having that head-end camera station to kind of facilitate that application there. Single point of support, we can see pros and cons to that system. Obviously, the pro is if something's going wrong and you have a very Axis end-to-end solution, you're going to be calling Axis. Sometimes the downside, people don't like to go with one manufacturer because they might feel like they're locked into one manufacturer. So we're going to see a lot of preference on what the end user's needs are and what their preference is in that space. Okay. All right, so cybersecurity. I know Brian mentioned cybersecurity a few times. We see it coming up more and more, and in the larger installations we run into, the more cybersecurity focused the conversation becomes. I like to say is you can log into a camera, but there's not going to be a button in the camera that says, would you like to be cyber secure? And you hit yes, and you're done. It does not quite work that way. What's interesting is doing research on cybersecurity and edge devices, we see something like 80 to 90% of cybersecurity issues are fixed by keeping firmware updated, and not using default passwords. I've literally been at a McDonald's, this was a couple years ago, where I opened up my computer, my Access Device Manager, when I start my computer, runs in the background. It found a bunch of cameras on the McDonald's network. I clicked a camera, typed in root, and I was in the camera. Obviously, that's a prime example of what not to do for cybersecurity, right? But
Hey,
that's more.
Joey, voice of God coming in again.
Yes.
I'm getting some requests, and maybe we can take a minute or two to change it so that the PowerPoint is the larger and the other camera is the smaller picture-in-picture. Because some people are
Sure.
starting to see.
Yeah. Let me know if that's changing on the fly for you or not.
Yeah, we can see those changes. Right now,
Right.
I don't know if you need to change the layering or something like that. I think you can move the layers to make the
Yep. We
image on
got
top
that.
of it.
No problem.
This is the first time we're doing this hybrid event, so we're learning as we go as well a little bit.
Yes. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do. Hold on there. Hmm. Okay. Sorry about this, guys. Yeah, I know now you're just looking at me. That's no good. All right. Well, for now, we might just have to do just the presentation, Philip. You think that could work?
Yeah, that should.
All righty. All right. Sorry about that. Going back to our slide here. All right. Going back. All right. So cybersecurity. So things besides just your standard updating firmware and not having the default username and password, we're finding more and more ways to cyber secure our cameras. So we do support a lot of your protocols, HTTPS, 802.1x, your basic type of security standards, but we're starting to add more and more security features in our cameras. So signed firmware and secure boot are two features that go hand in hand. And the idea here is to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks of somebody loading malicious firmware onto the cameras at some point from leaving our factory to being installed at the end user site. So what happens in signed firmware is basically the firmware is gets a checksum done on it. It's checked to make sure it's a valid firmware while the camera boots up. And if during secure boot it says, oh, that firmware is not signed, it is not a legit firmware, that camera will not boot up. So the idea here is to prevent malicious firmware but from being loaded onto the camera. Access Edge Vault is a newer cybersecurity measure in place using IEEE's 802.1 AR standard that basically is housing your trusted private security keys onto the device so they cannot be tampered with. Having a proprietary device ID when a product leaves the factory so it cannot be tampered with. And finally, the trusted platform module, the TPM module, is a module that we use that keeps the private keys for certificate signing and things like that confidential and sealed. So we could have probably a long 45-minute, 2-hour conversation on just cybersecurity, but I did definitely want to bring that portion up here for this application or for this presentation. Okay. So now we're going to get into some hardware product updates, what a lot of people know Access the best for. So our first camera here, the P3245. This camera's been out for probably almost a year already at this point. But this would be very much considered by our sales team as our bread and butter type camera. This is your 1080p dome camera with a varifocal lens on it, available to be vandal resistant, with or without IR, outdoor, those different options here. So from the camera perspective, it's the form factor we're all used to right above those screens here. But this camera takes in that ARTPEX 7, that cybersecurity chipset. This was one of the first cameras that brought in that cybersecurity chipset. Whew, it is really warm in the mask just talking. So to give some examples here, so 1080p, wide dynamic range, we'll show some side-by-side examples. So that camera is just installed in this building, so we don't really see these differences. So we'll have some examples of what kind of wide dynamic range and low light image improvements we're seeing. So on our left here, we have our P3225 LV Make II camera. For years, this was the most popular camera that Axis sold. And at the time, it had very good low light capabilities. This image is taken at like dusk, nighttime time of day. So on the left, it's not a bad image if we had like this is what the human eye sees application here. Whereas you can see, this is on the right, the 3245 with the Light Finder 2.0, better wide dynamic range capabilities. You can quickly see the contrast of those two images. And these two images are taken at the exact same time. Low light, so IR, using optimized IR and low light. This example is just showing you how much detail you can get out of the scene. So again, on the left, our 3225 previous version. I really like looking at the trees mainly. So trees and noise are the two things I'm looking at in this image. Where with the 3245, you see much deeper into that forest area, and it's also a very clean, low noise image. All right. So our next camera, this camera came out about 2 months ago, very new camera, not even 2 months ago. This is our P3715 PLVE camera. So this is our multi-sensor with just 2 image sensors on it. Ideally, this is designed for maybe hallways, for corners, or hallways just looking 2 different directions. So we already had our P3717 multi-sensor camera with the 4 sensors on it. And people were saying, oh, that's a pretty big camera. I don't need that many sensors. What if I could do something more basic? We have our 3715 here. Stairwells, absolutely. Yeah. So what do we have here? We have 2 2-megapixel varifocal lens cameras, 360-degree IR illumination, and those lights for IR can be individually controlled. So we have seen applications where, hey, it's mounted looking at a wall and you don't want that bright spot off of a wall or a pole. You can turn down some of the IR illumination, and outdoor rated as well. This application also shows that camera mounted outside with the sun shield on. Okay. Quickly switch applications here to our camera station. And this is so our P3715 camera. Here's the one we have installed here in the AEC. You guys probably walked right under it. For those who are here, when you walked in, right near the entrance. So one cable run, one IP address, and we have the sensors, one looking at the front door, the other one looking down this long hallway behind you here. With these sensors, it's nice you can do the corridor format as well, like we have on the right. So if you want to do both of them corridor format, if you're looking down a long hallway, it's an option for things we can do. And this camera, when it was released, because Genetec, Milestone, companies like that are very good partners of ours, when this camera was released, it was integrated with those VMS companies. So clear images in low light with the IR. We've already talked about most of these things here, so won't spend too much time going through all those details. All right, brand new camera, less than a month since it's been released, is our Axis Q6010-E camera. How many people in the room use the Q6000 series, the previous? Okay, couple hands going. You did, Steve? Excellent, good to hear. So our Q6000 spaceship camera right above us here had your 4 imagers. It actually interesting. It came out right around the time PoE Plus was ratified. So the Q6000 was technically not a PoE Plus enabled device. It came with a mid-span to do that 30 watts of power, but it didn't actually meet that IEEE spec of that 802.AT standard. So we did see some issues as that camera was aging, working with switches to negotiate that right power. The new 6010 series we have installed above the cafe table behind you there. Very similar form factor, but a lot more guts to it. So it got 4 5-megapixel image sensors. So we got our 20 megapixel view. And we also have interchangeable lens options on this camera. So it's not a varifocal camera, but each lens comes with a 2.8 millimeter, a very wide field of view shot. But you can have the option to change it to be 6, 16, and 25 millimeter lens options. So as lenses screw off, you can screw on a new lens to get you an even more tight field of view. One big complaint with the 6000 with the PTZ was the calibration. You would install the PTZ camera. You'd have to configure each individual sensor to do that point and click functionality where you would click on a spot and the PTZ would go there. This one does auto calibration. There's a manual mode too if you would prefer that, but the automatic one works pretty well. So switching back to camera station here. So here's our new 6010 with a Q6075 PTZ in the middle. And things we can do here are the point and click. So if we wanted to say, hey, I want to look at this chair over here, we can go to that chair, and we're in a live demo. So of course, it's not behaving with me. I am not very happy with this one.
Joey, I think the reason it's auto tracking right now.
Yep, I think it stopped though. So now it should be good. There we go. So there's 2 features going on, and we're going to discuss that second feature that Philip just mentioned there. So the point and click functionality where you click on one spot and the PTZ goes to that area. Now what Philip's talking about, what this camera also is doing, is auto tracking. Now here we go, Steve's in the picture. And now that camera is auto tracking Steve where he's going. In our case, with the shiny surfaces around it, we have seen a few issues where it's trying to follow reflections and things like that. But you did see as Steve's walking around, it will follow him. It must have a sweet tooth right now, Kennedy. So seeing the reflection of them. So we are working on that auto tracking, testing it out here. And that is a function that can be turned on and off, but we do like that point and click functionality even a little more. So right now that Q6010 camera worked with our Q60 series PTZ, so the 60, 75, 74. So it's working on that auto tracking right now. What camera is not released yet, but in the near future will be our Q6100. So we're going to have a little bit of confusion with the part number, so I did want to mention that. We'll have the 6010, which will work on the Q60 series cameras, and then the 6100, which will work on Q61 series PTZs. In terms of form factor, how those PTZs look different, the Q61 series have these more spherical bubbles so the camera can see above the horizon a little bit, where a Q60 camera is more like this PTZ, where it's not going to be able to see above that horizon. So with this next generation, that 6100 is only going to work with those Q61 series cameras. Q6010 works with the Q60 series. So a little bit confusing there, but did want to bring up those differences. So 360 camera with the 1 click, 4 5-megapixel sensors with the interchangeable lenses, requires the Q60 PTZ camera, and the autopilot is included As you saw, it still needs a little work in my opinion, but it is out there as a way that when you're in an outdoor setting, it does work better than what we're seeing in our indoor space here. Okay. So the big selling point on these series cameras is someone says, hey, I want a PTZ camera. PTZs are great. And what happens is you do two things. One, the camera's looking over here when the event that you wanted to monitor happens over here. Or you set the PTZ to be on a guard tour and you still might be missing events because you're not having that full awareness. The Q6010 gives you that full 360 view, or you can modify it with the different lenses or for your areas of interest. That's always recording. And then that PTZ camera can jump in to give you more detail at certain spots. Now, in the next section, we'll be talking about some analytics, and analytics are going to be important with this camera as well. Okay. So, analytics, one that's been around for a while, but I just wanted to demo as an example, is our Axis Fence Guard. So, Fence Guard we have set up where you cross a line and it triggers an alert. What action you want that to be? Now, what's interesting with the Q6010 camera that we have is you can load analytics on those fixed sensors. Say you have a fixed sensor looking at a bridge and you want to know when someone enters that bridge, that cross line trips, you can say, okay, I want that PTZ to go to a preset of where that line was triggered. So now we're using those cameras with analytics to tell that PTZ where to go. Because a lot of times cameras might not be manned all the time. So being able to tell that PTZ where to go can make your system a lot smarter. Okay, so in our demo here, it's pretty simple here. Just gotta get to the right spot. All right. So we have our Axis Fence Guard. Let me get the right resolution here so we get the overlay that I'm looking for. All right. We'll show you on the samples over here, the different cameras we have showing. We can basically draw that fence guard line. When we cross the line, we trigger that alert to do what we want to do with like that PTZ camera, or with the glass break detection, it sends off an alert to the speaker, things of that nature. Okay.
Joey, we had a question come in from
Yes.
can I utilize the fence guard on a mobile application? For example, I have a mobile fence guard as my device moves, say heavy equipment for safety purposes. I'm not exactly sure if James, if you're asking, and you can unmute yourself and talk too if you want to clarify your question. He's typing here, so I'm trying to see.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm just thinking if I had the camera on like a piece of equipment and I had the fence guard for like a geo fence, like a safety. So if a worker came within a certain amount of me, it could alert me.
Okay.
I mean, just thinking out loud, just curious.
I can answer that. I think as you're moving, it probably won't be very accurate because the whole scene would be moving. Mm-hmm. But if you're parking from spot to spot, it could probably work fairly well. But then you would have to have something that would tell it that you're moving or not moving. So in general, I would probably say no. It's more designed for a fixed camera location. So even if you look at the PTCs, you can set it up per different presets because you can have different, obviously the camera's looking at different things, and then as you're moving the PTC, it actually disables itself.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yep. And these are analytics that we have that have been around for quite a few years and are considered probably your more basic analytics. So fence guard, loitering, motion guard, things of that nature. In our product portfolio, we have one camera right now. It's the Q1615 Make 3. It's a box camera. that has a new chipset on it. It's called the TensorFlow chip. And what this chip is going to allow us to do is do more analytics data at the edge. So right now, our analytics on the camera are pretty simple. It's that cross-line detection, things of that nature. What we're seeing with this TensorFlow chip is some deep learning analytics. So the camera looking at a scene and being able to differentiate between a car versus a person versus a truck versus a bicycle. So we're seeing these powerful analytics of being able to do something like that being pushed to the edge. Now, today it should be noted that that TensorFlow chip is in just one of our cameras, but it's that next generation, that innovation, that next step that Axis is looking at doing. So when we started looking at the beta of that analytic, the first application that came into my head was maybe an entrance to a facility. Hey, if a car comes in, that's fine. That could be motion crossing a line, and that's fine. But if a person's coming in, when it should only just be someone in a car, I want to be alerted of that. So having an analytic that can detect that difference between a person versus a vehicle on the edge could be a pretty cool and useful tool down the road here. So that's just one example of the analytics that we're looking at doing, that we are doing, but it's just now being released. So right now, if we use that Q1615 camera that analytic is loaded on, it's a beta version of that analytic. It's set to be released mainstream in December of this year and add to it from there. So, because right now what we're seeing is for complex analytics, a lot of that's happening at a server. And we can see some very cool analytic demonstrations. We have BriefCam here that's showing, hey, I want to look at all my video and find any red trucks throughout my whole system. And BriefCam can do that. And right now that's a centralized option. What we're hoping to see is to use BriefCam maybe in combination with a camera that can do edge-based analytics. So maybe BriefCam's still going to be there to look for trucks and certain colors and things like that, but at least our edge, we can start filtering those analytics. And it's a very important part of the solution because right now there's tons and tons of cameras out there and not a lot of people watching them. So we need those analytics in place to help us find relevant video quicker and also be able to have a system that's more proactive to tell us when there's problems opposed to reactive, which we're still at a lot today. So. Let's see. I think that's about all I have. From here on, it's just any questions you may have. I'm happy to answer them now. Not sure if any more came over the chat or anyone here has any questions. No? Okay. Oh, good. Okay. Great. So let's see if you want to come up and say a few things. I'll finish up, but we're around. So for the people who are here, there's obviously a lot of things in this room to look at. It's a very distracting room. So if while we were presenting, you said, hey, what's this or what's that, let us know. We'll be around to answer any questions that may come up. And I will switch audio over to Steve.
Am I hot? Okay, I hope. Anyway, I just wanted to say very much for you guys taking the time out. The idea behind today is, this is obviously a pandemic and this was a little bit of a learning experience for us. We're happy that you guys all made time to do it. I really want to thank Pentegra Systems for coming out, for helping us put this event together. Again, the thing about Axis is we're always looking to the future, but we want to work with our customers and their customers. We want to find out what are your challenges. We don't want to just sit here and show up and throw up information. We want to find out what are your challenges, what are you guys up against, where are you seeing your big problems, and then collaborate with you. We're not always going to have the right solution, but a lot of times we're going to be able to arrive at a sensible solution that makes sense both from a budgetary perspective as well as from a practical perspective. So I thank Mary, I thank Greg, I thank Dan and the whole Pentegra team for coming out. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to follow up. The chat line's still open as far as I know, and we appreciate you guys taking time. So we look forward to having you back anytime you'd like, and thanks again for making time. Appreciate it.